She didn't go into the forest looking for trouble. She went knowing exactly where trouble lived, and calculating very carefully that she could get what she needed before it noticed her. The tree she had found 2 seasons ago was older than anything else in that part of the wood, taller than it had any right to be. The kind of tree that appears on no map and in no record, the kind that locals learn to walk around without quite knowing why. Dusk fern grew on its branches, more of it than she had seen anywhere else, thick and undisturbed. Exactly what her mother needed and exactly what she had not been able to find in sufficient quantity anywhere safer. She knew the stories. Everyone who spent enough time in those woods knew them. The tree was old. The tree was watched. The tree was best left alone. She had a plan. Take only what she needed. Stay quiet. Move quickly. Leave before anything noticed she had been there at all. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't careless. She made her calculations quietly, decided the cost was worth it, and moved before anyone could tell her otherwise. That was the thing about Maeva that most people never understood. It almost worked. What she found near the top of that tree was the precise moment her calculations failed her, for the first time in a life built entirely on getting them right. And by the time she understood what was happening, she was already falling. The forest went quiet around her. This is the story of what happened next, of the man who found her there, a king who had no particular reason to stay, and who stayed anyway, night after night, long after the danger had passed, and long after anyone would have thought to question it. It is a quiet story. There are no great battles in it, no political intrigues, no ancient curses demanding to be broken. There is only a woman who never asked for help, and a man who gave it anyway, and the strange, slow, entirely unexpected thing that grew between them, the way dusk fern grows, in the high places, in the difficult light, without asking anyone's permission. Chapter 1. The tree was exactly where she had left it. Maeva stood at the edge of the clearing for a moment, looking up. The canopy above was dense enough to turn the morning light gray and filtered, the kind of light that made distances hard to judge. The tree rose through it like something that had been there before the forest itself, bark dark and deeply furrowed, branches spreading wide and then reaching higher than made sense for anything still living. She had found it by accident 2 seasons ago, following a deer trail that ended nowhere, and she had known immediately what it was. Not from any book, from the particular quality of the silence around it, the way the birds were absent, the way the air near the trunk felt older than the air 10 paces back. She had left that day without touching it. She was not leaving today. The dusk fern grew in clusters along the mid and upper branches. She could see it clearly now, dark green against the lighter bark, exactly what she needed. The lower clusters were gone, harvested long ago by hands more cautious than hers. What remained was higher up. She had known that before she came. She had planned for it. She checked the satchel at her hip. Scissors, cloth wrapping, the small glass jar with the sealed lid. Room for exactly what she needed and nothing more. She had not brought more room on purpose. A limit she could not exceed even if she wanted to. She was not greedy. She was precise. The first branches were easy. The bark was rough enough to grip, the spacing generous, and she moved upward with the efficiency of someone who had climbed things her entire life. Rooftops, haystacks, the old oak at the edge of her mother's property when she was small, and the world still felt manageable from a height. She did not look down. The dusk fern at the mid-level was older growth, less potent. She passed it. What she needed was higher, the new clusters, the ones that hadn't been touched, the ones whose properties her mother's body would actually respond to after 2 seasons of diminishing returns from lesser batches. She climbed. The forest below her disappeared into green shadow. The wind was different up here, present in a way it wasn't on the ground, moving through the upper branches with a sound like something breathing. Maeva braced herself against the trunk and reached for the nearest cluster of dusk fern, her scissors already open. She had just closed them around the first stem when she felt it. Not a sound, not a movement. Something older than either. A change in the quality of the air around the branch to her left. A heaviness. A presence that had not been there a moment ago and was very much there now. She turned her head slowly. The guardian was perhaps 2 feet from her hand. It was longer than she had expected, longer than the stories had suggested, though the stories had been vague about specifics in the way that stories are when the people telling them had never actually seen the thing. Its scales were the color of the bark, which was why she hadn't seen it. Its head was raised. Its eyes were open and entirely still, watching her with the particular patience of something that has never needed to hurry. Maeva did not move. She understood, in the clearest and most useless way, that she had miscalculated. Not the climbing, not the harvesting. The assumption that speed would be enough, that quiet would be enough, that taking only what she needed would be a kind of negotiation the guardian would honor. It was not interested in negotiation. It moved faster than she could process. A sharp pain above her ankle, immediate and deep, the kind that arrives before the mind has finished understanding what caused it. Her grip on the branch loosened before she decided to loosen it. Her body made the decision her mind hadn't reached yet. She fell. The branches caught her twice on the way down, slowing her, not saving her. She hit the ground on her side, the impact driving the air from her lungs completely, and for a long moment, there was nothing but the gray light above her and the sound of her own breathing returning in ragged increments. She lay still. The satchel was still at her hip. The scissors were gone, somewhere in the canopy above her, lost on the way down. She had managed to hold on to one thing, a single cluster of dusk fern, cut clean, still in her left hand. She looked at it for a moment. Then she tried to stand. Her right leg did not cooperate. The ankle, the bite, sent a message to her brain that was clear and immediate and final. No. She made it to one elbow before the pain resolved the argument, and she lowered herself back to the ground with as much control as she could manage, which was not much. The warmth had already reached her knee. She looked at the trees around her. The clearing was small. The trail back was 20 minutes on 2 working legs, longer on one, and she did not think she had longer. The venom was already doing something. She could feel it at the edges of her awareness, a slight tilt to the tree line that corrected itself when she focused and returned the moment she stopped. She opened her mouth to call for help. The forest absorbed the sound without interest. No one knew she was here. Her mother believed she would be back before sunset. No one else would think to look for her until tomorrow. And tomorrow, in the particular arithmetic of guardian venom, was a measurement she was no longer certain applied to her. She had come alone, as she always did. Because it was faster. Because it was simpler. Because she had never needed anyone to come with her before. She closed her hand around the dusk fern, pressed her back against the nearest tree. The warmth reached her thigh. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a horse shifted. Maeva lifted her head. The sound came once, hooves on dry ground, unhurried, the rhythm of something moving without urgency through the wood. Then silence. She waited. She did not call out again. If she had imagined it, the sound of her own voice failing to carry would be worse than the silence. And if she hadn't? The trees to her left moved. The movement came again. A dark horse emerged from between the trees, large, unhurried, picking its way through the undergrowth with the quiet confidence of an animal that had done this 1,000 times. The man on its back saw her before she could decide whether to speak. He pulled the horse to a stop. For a moment he simply looked at her, the way she was sitting against the tree, the angle of her leg, the hand closed around something she hadn't let go of even in the fall. His eyes moved to the tree above her, back to her ankle, back to her face. He dismounted without a word. He was larger than she had expected. Not in the way that registered as threatening, in the way that registered as fact. The way you note that a doorframe is lower than you thought, or a river is wider. He crossed the clearing in a few strides, and crouched beside her, and she had the brief, strange impression of someone who had reduced themselves deliberately, brought themselves to her level with a care that didn't match the size of him. "The tree," he said. It wasn't a question. He had already seen it. "I know what it is," Maeva said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt, which she was grateful for. "The bite is above the ankle. The venom is moving. I can't walk." He looked at her for a moment. Something shifted in his expression, not alarm, something more controlled than alarm, and because of that, somehow more serious. "How long ago?" he said. "Perhaps 20 minutes. She paused. "Maybe less." He didn't respond. He was already moving, back to the horse, adjusting the saddlebag, and then returning to her with a focus that left no room for anything unnecessary. He crouched beside her again. "I'm going to lift you," he said. "Tell me if something makes it worse." She wanted to say she could manage. The words didn't arrive in time. He had already slid one arm beneath her knees and the other behind her back. And then the ground was gone, and she was being carried with a steadiness that made argument feel beside the point. The horse accepted her weight without complaint. He settled her across the saddle, and then mounted behind her in a single motion, one arm coming around her to take the reins. And she was aware, distantly, through the growing warmth spreading up her leg, that she was leaning back against someone she had never met, and that this was the least of her problems. "Valdemar," she said. "Is that where you're going?" "It is now." He urged the horse forward. The forest moved past them. Maeva focused on her breathing, slow and deliberate, the way Ellie had taught her years ago for pain management, a technique she had always considered theoretical until now. It helped, marginally. The warmth had reached her hip. She did not mention this. "Stay with me," he said. She realized her head had dropped. She lifted it. "I'm here," she said. "What's your name?" he said. An odd thing to ask. Practical, she understood. Keep her talking. Keep her present. She answered anyway. "Maeva. Kale." He didn't say anything else. She didn't either. Names felt distant and administrative against the specific reality of the venom and the horse and the trees thinning around them as they moved toward open ground. "Don't let me sleep," she said. A pause. Brief. "I won't. I mean it." She heard the edges of her own voice going strange. Not slurred. Not yet. But softer than she intended. Like a word spoken in a room where the acoustics were wrong. "If I sleep now, I know," he said. "I won't let you." She believed him. She wasn't sure why. Perhaps because he had said it without reassurance in his voice. No warmth. No comfort. Just the flat certainty of someone stating a thing they intended to be true. She talked. Not because she wanted to. Because he kept asking things. Small things. How far had she walked this morning? What she had been carrying? Whether the pain was changing or staying the same. She answered each one, and the effort of answering kept the gray at the edges of her vision from advancing, and the gray stayed at the edges, and the horse kept moving. The warmth reached her side. "It's getting worse," she said. He looked down at the bite, longer this time than before. When he looked back at the road ahead, something in his jaw had changed. Small, controlled. The kind of thing a person does when they are deciding not to show what they are actually thinking. "I know," he said. "We're close." She looked up. The tree line had broken. Ahead of them, rising above the open fields in the late morning light, she could see the walls of Valdemar, pale stone, high towers, a gate already visible in the distance. It looked very far away. "Talk to me," he said. "About what? Anything." She thought about it. Her mind moved slowly, like something working through resistance. "I had a plan," she said finally. "This morning. A good one." A pause. What happened to it? The guardian disagreed. He said nothing, but something shifted in the quality of the silence behind her. Not quite amusement, not quite the opposite. She held on to that. Held on to the walls in the distance, the arm around her, the sound of hooves on open ground. She did not sleep. The gates of Valdenmoor opened before them. And for the first time since he had found her, Cale urged the horse faster. Before we continue, if you felt something in this first chapter that made you want to stay, please subscribe to the channel. It takes 1 second, and it means a lot to me. Ellie was already in the corridor when they arrived. Maeva would think about that later, how the old woman had appeared at the top of the castle steps before anyone had announced them, before the gates had fully closed behind the horse, as though she had known to expect something before the something had arrived. At the time, Maeva was too occupied with the particular effort of remaining conscious to find it strange. Cale carried her inside without ceremony. Ellie walked ahead of them, opening doors, saying nothing. The corridors were cool and dim after the brightness of the open road, and Maeva focused on the ceiling moving above her, stone arches, evenly spaced, something to count. She counted to 11 before they stopped. The room was small and clean. A workbench along one wall, shelves above it dense with jars and bundles, and things she recognized and things she didn't. A narrow bed positioned near the window where the light was best. Elie's room, she understood. Not a guest chamber. The place where actual work happened. Cale set her down with the same steadiness with which he had lifted her, and then stepped back. Not far, just enough to give Ellie room to move. Maeva noticed he did not leave. Ellie worked without speaking. Her hands moved over Maeva's ankle with a focused economy that Maeva recognized from her own practice. The touch of someone who had learned to gather information quickly and without announcement. She removed the boot with a care that minimized movement, looked at the mark for a long moment. Then she was quiet. The silence lasted perhaps 10 seconds. It felt longer. Maeva watched Elida's face and found nothing readable there, which was itself a kind of reading. A healer who showed nothing when she looked at a wound was either very experienced or looking at something that required composure. Cale broke the silence first. "How bad?" he said. Ellie didn't answer immediately. She reached for a jar on the shelf above the workbench, opened it, brought it close to the bite mark. Whatever she was looking for, she found it. She set the jar down. "Where did she find the tree?" Ellie said. Not to Maeva, to Cale. "The Eastern Wood," he said. "An hour's ride." Ellie nodded slowly. The kind of nod that means I thought so, not I understand. It was then that it happened. Maeva shifted slightly on the bed, the movement small, involuntary, the venom making itself known again in a wave that started at her ankle and traveled upward with a patience she was beginning to find personal. Her hand moved with her, and the satchel at her hip tilted, and a single cluster of dusk fern slid free from the opening and fell to the stone floor. Ellie looked at it. She did not pick it up immediately. She looked at it the way a person looks at something they recognize from a description they hoped they would never need to use. Then she crouched, slowly, and lifted it between 2 fingers. "Where did she get this?" she said. "The room was very quiet. She was carrying it when I found her," Cale said. "She was holding it when she fell." Ellie turned the dusk fern over once, set it carefully on the workbench, looked at Maeva for the first time since beginning the examination, directly, with an attention that was different from the clinical focus of before. Something more like assessment, like she was revising an opinion she hadn't known she'd formed. "The guardian bit her," Ellie said. It was not a question. "Yes," Maeva said. Ellie was quiet for a moment. Then she said, with the particular flatness of someone delivering information they would prefer not to deliver, "Dusk fern grows on many trees. Most of them can be harvested without consequence." She paused. "Not that one." "I know," Maeva said. "The upper branches of that tree are different," Ellie continued. "The growth there has not been touched in decades, It is still forming. Taking from it is not harvesting. She set the dusk fern down with a care that felt almost like apology. The guardian does not distinguish between greed and need. It only knows that something was taken that was not ready to be taken. Maeva said nothing. There was nothing useful to say. Cale looked at her then. Briefly, the kind of look that lasts less than a second but arrives with weight. She had not fallen into this. She had climbed into it. Something in his expression shifted, though she couldn't have named what it changed from or what it changed to. The guardian's venom is not the same as an ordinary serpent's, Ellie said, moving back to the workbench, already opening jars. I can slow it. I can treat the symptoms as they arrive. Whether I can stop it entirely depends on how far it has already moved and how your body responds in the next day. And if it doesn't respond, Cale said. Ellie did not turn around. If it doesn't respond, she said, 3 days would be optimistic. The room absorbed this. Maeva looked at the ceiling. Stone arches, the same as the corridor. She started counting them. Behind her, she heard Cale move to the window. He stood there for a long moment, looking out at something she couldn't see. When he spoke, his voice was the same as it had been on the road, flat, certain, leaving no room for negotiation. Then we start now, he said. Elid's hands didn't pause. We already have, she said. By the following morning, she was better. Not well, not even close to well, but better in the way that makes a person dangerous. The fever had not arrived yet. The venom had plateaued or seemed to have, which Elide explained was not the same as retreating, but which produced the same effect on Maeva's thinking. The conviction that the worst had passed. She sat up without help. That felt significant. A chair near the window was empty. She looked at it for a moment, then looked away. Elide, who had been working at the bench when Maeva woke, looked at her over her shoulder and said nothing. This, Maeva was beginning to understand, was how Elide communicated most things. A young woman brought broth and set it on the table beside the bed without making eye contact. Maeva drank it. It was better than she expected, which she also found suspicious. Everything that felt manageable this morning felt like a negotiation she hadn't agreed to yet. Elide came to check the bite mid-morning. The mark had changed color slightly, deeper at the center, the edges less angry than they had been the night before. Elide examined it for a long moment, pressed 2 fingers gently above the ankle, watched Maeva's face while she did it. Better, Maeva said. Quieter, Elide said. Those are different things. Maeva considered this. How different? Elide straightened. The venom from the guardian doesn't leave the way ordinary venom leaves. It doesn't weaken and retreat. It settles. She moved back to the bench. What you're feeling now is it finding its place, deciding what it intends to do. And then it does it. Maeva looked at the window. The morning light was pale and clean, the kind of light that made everything look more manageable than it was. She had always distrusted that kind of light. How long, she said, before we know which way it will go? Elide paused. By tonight, probably. Tomorrow morning at the latest. The door opened. Cale entered the way he moved through every space she had seen him in, without announcing himself, without adjusting to the room. So he had left at some point. She wasn't sure when. She looked at him the way she would look at any fact about the room, noting it, filing it, moving on. He looked at Maeva sitting up in the bed, and something crossed his face that she couldn't quite read. Not relief, something more careful than relief, as though he had considered several responses and selected the most neutral one. You're awake, he said. I have been for a while, she said. He looked at Elide. Elide looked back at him with the expression of someone who had already answered this question twice, and was prepared to answer it a third time if necessary. The same as this morning, Elide said. Quiet. We wait. Kyle nodded. He moved to the window, the same window he had stood at the night before, Maeva realized. The same position. As though he had a particular relationship with that specific view. "You should sleep more," he said, not looking at her. "I slept enough." "You didn't," she almost argued. Something in the flatness of it stopped her. Not authority, exactly. Certainty. The tone of someone who had been awake when she hadn't been, and therefore knew things about the night she didn't. She lay back down. Not because he had said to. Because she was, she admitted privately, more tired than sitting up had suggested. The morning passed slowly. Ellie worked. Kyle remained by the window, occasionally leaving and returning without explanation. Maeva drifted in and out of a shallow sleep that felt less like rest and more like the particular suspension of someone waiting for a verdict. It was late afternoon when the fever arrived. It came without warning. No gradual warmth, no slow build. One moment she was watching the light change on the ceiling. The next, the ceiling was too bright and too far away simultaneously, and the room had acquired a quality of wrongness that she couldn't locate or correct. She heard herself say something. She wasn't sure what. Then Ellie was beside her, and the ceiling kept moving, and the light stopped making sense entirely. And somewhere beyond the blur, Kale was already moving. The fever spoke for her. That was the only way Kale would later think about it. Not that she had said things, but that the fever had said them, using her voice, her cadence, the particular rhythm of someone who chose words carefully when conscious, and therefore chose them strangely when she was not. He had sent the others away near midnight. Ellie had protested, briefly, and then looked at his face and stopped protesting. The young woman who brought water had not returned. It was only him now, and the room, and the sound of Maeva's breathing moving between steady and ragged without pattern or warning. He sat in the chair by the window. He had not planned to stay. He had told himself, coming up the corridor, that he would check on her and return to his own work. There was always work. There was a border dispute requiring his attention in the east, correspondence from 3 separate houses waiting on his desk, a meeting he had already postponed twice. He was aware of all of it, with the distant clarity of things that had temporarily lost their urgency without becoming less real. He stayed. She moved in and out of something that was not quite sleep and not quite waking, a threshold state where her body was present, but whatever governed her usual caution was not. She spoke in fragments. Some of it was formless, syllables without architecture. Some of it was clear. The lower batch isn't strong enough. It hasn't been for months. A pause. Her hands moved slightly against the blanket. She couldn't finish the stairs yesterday. She thinks I don't notice. He understood from context that she was talking about her mother. He did not move, did not speak. He had the particular stillness of someone who has realized that any movement might close a door that is currently, unexpectedly, open. I just need a little more time. The words arrived with a tiredness that had nothing to do with the fever, the exhaustion of someone who had been saying this to themselves for much longer than the current crisis. He recognized it. Not the specific content, but the shape of it. The sound of a person who had been carrying something alone for long enough that they had forgotten it was heavy. Ellie had told him to call her if the fever spiked. He watched the candle on the workbench. He did not call her. Later, an hour, perhaps more, Maeva's breathing steadied. The fragments became quieter, further apart. In the near silence between them, she said something he almost missed. I wanted to see the sea. Not a complaint, not a wish directed at anyone. The way a person states a fact about themselves in the dark when they believe no one is listening. The kind of thought that lives in the back of the mind and only surfaces when the front of the mind has stopped standing guard. He looked at her. She was still. Her face in the candlelight had lost the tension it carried when she was awake, the particular alertness that he had noticed from the moment he found her in the clearing, the expression of someone who was always, on some level, calculating. Without it, she looked younger, not fragile, just unguarded in a way she would not have permitted had she known. He turned back to the window. Though someone sitting in that chair would have struggled to explain, precisely when checking on a patient became something else entirely. The night passed slowly. Twice the fever spiked, and he called Ellie, who came and worked in efficient silence and left again without comment. Once Maeva reached for something in her sleep, her hand moving toward the edge of the bed, searching, and he leaned forward without thinking, and was already reaching back before he caught himself and stopped. He sat back. He looked at his own hand for a moment. Then he looked at the window, where the first gray light of early morning was beginning to separate the sky from the tree line. And he thought about a woman who had climbed a tree she knew was dangerous, because the alternative was watching her mother suffer, and who had made that calculation alone, and who had apparently been making calculations like it alone for long enough that the habit had become invisible to her. He thought about the sea. He had seen it many times. It had never seemed like something a person could want and simply not have. It had simply been there, part of the world, accessible. He tried to remember the last time he had wanted something ordinary that he could not reach. He couldn't. When Maeva woke for the first time, briefly, just before dawn, her eyes opening and focusing on the ceiling with the cautious effort of someone testing whether the world had returned to its correct proportions, Cale was still in the chair. She turned her head and looked at him. He looked back. Neither of them spoke. After a moment, her eyes closed again, and her breathing slowed into something closer to actual sleep than anything the night had produced. And Cale stayed where he was until the morning light made the candle unnecessary. And then he stayed a little longer. She woke properly on the third day. Not the threshold waking of the fever, the brief surfacings that left no memory and no clarity. This was different. The ceiling was the ceiling. The light through the window was afternoon light, gold and unhurried, and when she turned her head, the room held its proportions correctly, and the chair by the window was occupied. Cale was asleep in it, not comfortably. His head was tipped back at an angle that would make itself known to him later, his arms crossed, his boots still on. He looked in sleep, less like a king than like a man who had sat down for a moment and lost the argument with exhaustion. She looked at him for longer than she intended to. Ellie appeared in the doorway before she could decide what to do with the looking. "Good," Ellie said, in the tone of someone crossing an item off a list. She came in, checked the bite, checked Maeva's eyes, pressed 2 fingers to her wrist, conducted the entire examination without waking Cale, with the practiced quiet of someone who had done this before. "The fever broke this morning," Ellie said, low. "You'll be weak for several days. The ankle will need another week before you can put full weight on it." "But I'll be fine," Maeva said. Ellie looked at her. "You'll be fine." Something unknotted in Maeva's chest. She hadn't let herself measure how tightly it had been wound until it wasn't. "How long was I?" 3 days, Ellie said. "Since the fever started. 5 since he brought you in. 5 days. Maeva absorbed this. Her mother would be past worried by now. Would have moved through worried and out the other side into the particular exhausted calm of someone who has spent too long imagining the worst. She needed to send word. She needed to. "A message was already sent," Ellie said, reading something in her expression. 2 days ago. She knows you're alive and being treated. She knows where you are." Maeva looked at her. "Who arranged that?" Elie's gaze moved briefly to the chair by the window, then back to Maeva. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Cale woke an hour later to find Maeva sitting up in the bed, working through a bowl of soup with the focused determination of someone conducting a serious task. He straightened in the chair, registered the angle his neck had acquired, and said nothing about it. "You're awake," he said. "I've been awake for a while," she said. The echo of their first exchange in this room was not lost on either of them, she thought. Or perhaps only on her. He stood. moved to the window, then seemed to reconsider, and moved instead to the chair closer to the bed that Ellie used during examinations. He sat in it. This put him at a different angle than the window chair, closer, and she had the sense of a small, deliberate decision being made without announcement. "How do you feel?" he said. "Better than I did." She paused. "Ellie said a week before I can walk properly. Longer, if you push it." "I won't push it." He looked at her with the expression of someone who had formed an opinion and was keeping it to himself. She found to her mild surprise that she didn't mind. "You sent word to my mother," she said. "A beat." "Yes. Thank you." She meant it simply, without ceremony, and said it that way. He nodded. Something about the exchange settled, not awkwardly, just completely, the way a thing does when it's been acknowledged and doesn't need to be held anymore. She ate more soup. He remained where he was, which she was becoming accustomed to, his particular quality of stillness, the way he occupied a space without filling it unnecessarily. Outside, the afternoon light was moving toward evening. A bird she couldn't identify called twice from somewhere below the window and then was quiet. "You've never seen the sea," he said. She went still. It was not a question. It was the tone of someone stating something they knew, and she had not told him that. She had not told anyone that, not recently, not in a context he could have heard. Her mind moved back through the fever days, the fragments she half remembered and half invented, and found the gap where the information must have gone. She looked at him. "You heard that?" she said. He didn't look away. "You said it. 3 nights ago. The fever." "Of course." She thought about what else she might have said. About her mother, about the stairs, about the lower batches not being strong enough for months. The thought arrived with a particular quality of exposure that she hadn't felt in a long time, the sensation of having been seen in a room she had believed was private. She looked back at her soup. "I've been meaning to go," she said. "There's never been a good time." "Where would you go?" If there were a good time, an odd question. Specific, in the way of someone who was actually asking, rather than making conversation. She considered it with more seriousness than she had given the subject in years, because it seemed to require seriousness. "The southern coast," she said finally. "I've read that it's different from the northern water. Warmer. The kind of place where you can stand in it without immediately regretting it." "It is," he said. "Warmer. The light is different too. Later in the evening than you'd expect." She looked at him. He was looking at the window, not at her, and there was something in his expression that she couldn't quite name. Not nostalgia. Something more present than that. The look of someone holding a piece of information carefully, deciding what to do with it. "I'll go," she said. "After my mother is better. After I've found enough dusk fern from a less eventful source." She paused. "I had a plan, coming here. It didn't account for this. Plans rarely do," he said. "Mine usually do." He looked at her then. Something shifted in the quality of his attention, not surprise, something more like recognition, as though she had confirmed something he had been considering. "Yes," he said. "I imagine they do." She didn't know what to do with that. So she finished the soup and set the bowl aside and looked at the window where the light was going gold and long across the floor, and noticed that her things, her satchel, her coat, the small bundle she had carried into the forest, were stacked neatly on the shelf near the door. She hadn't put them there. "My things," she said. "Elid's assistant brought them from the forest," Cale said. "The day after you arrived." She thought about this. Someone had gone back into the forest, past the tree, past whatever remained of the Guardian's attention, to collect the belongings of a woman they didn't know, because she might want them when she woke up. She looked at her satchel for a moment. Then she looked at Kyle, who was watching the window with the expression of a man who had not mentioned this and had not planned to. "You sent someone," she said. He said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. She looked back at the window. Outside, the bird called once more and went quiet, and the light continued its slow movement across the floor, and Maeva sat with the strange and unfamiliar sensation of being somewhere she had not chosen, and finding, against all calculation, that it did not feel wrong. 4 days after the fever broke, Ellie said it the way she said most things, without preamble, without softening, as a fact delivered to someone she assumed could handle facts. You can leave within a day or two. The ankle will need care, but you know how to do that. Maeva was sitting at the workbench, helping Ellie sort dried herbs into cloth bundles, something to do with her hands while the rest of her recovered, a task she had offered and Ellie had accepted without ceremony. She continued working while she absorbed this. "Good," she said. She meant it. She had been meaning it, in a low and constant way, since she had woken up enough to mean things. Her mother had received word, but word was not the same as presence. The lower batch of what she had brought home before this would not last much longer. There were things waiting, real things, the ordinary weight of a life that had continued without her while she was here. She began thinking, practically, about the walk home. The ankle would slow her. She would need a stick for the first part of the road, until the path leveled out. She should leave in the morning, early, before the day got warm. "He hasn't left the castle," Ellie said. Maeva's hands slowed on the herbs. "Since you arrived," Ellie continued, in the same tone she used for everything, informational, unornamented. "He had business in the Eastern Territory. He postponed it." A pause. Twice, Maeva set down the bundle she was holding. The workbench was very quiet. Outside, she could hear the ordinary sounds of the castle, footsteps in the corridor, something being moved in a room above, the distant rhythm of the yard below the window. Everything continuing as it always continued. "Why are you telling me this?" Maeva said. Ellie looked at her with the expression she used when she found a question less interesting than the person asking it. "Because you're planning to leave tomorrow morning, and I thought you should know. It doesn't change anything." "No," Ellie said. "Probably not." She returned to her work. Maeva returned to hers after a moment. The herbs were lavender and something she didn't recognize. She sorted them by stem length, the way Ellie had shown her, and tried to think clearly about what she had just been told. He had stayed. Not because of duty. There was duty waiting for him elsewhere, and he had postponed it. Not because Ellie had required it. Ellie required nothing from anyone except competence and the occasional absence. He had stayed because he had decided to stay, which was not the same thing as any of the explanations she had been quietly constructing for the past 4 days. She had been constructing them carefully. Responsibility, he had found her. So perhaps he felt some obligation to see the outcome. Practicality, a death in the castle required documentation, and it was simpler to prevent one. Custom, perhaps Alpha Kings routinely sat beside the beds of people they'd rescued. None of these had been fully convincing. She had applied them anyway, because the alternative was sitting with something she didn't have a category for yet. She didn't have a category for this either. She thought about the sea, about the way he had said it, not as a question, as a thing he already knew, about the conversation that had followed, the quality of his attention when she'd spoken, about the belongings on the shelf, retrieved from a forest she would not have gone back to herself for some time. She thought about the chair by the window, the angle his neck had been at when she woke. "You should ask him," Ellie had not said. What Ellie had said was, "I thought you should know," which was, Maeva understood, Elli's version of the same thing. She picked up another bundle of herbs. "I'll leave in the morning," she said. "Yes," Ellie said. "I imagined you would." Neither of them said anything else. The sorting continued. The light through the window moved in its slow way across the workbench, and Maeva worked with the careful precision she brought to everything, and thought about a man who had stayed when he didn't have to, and did not yet know what she was going to do about it. but she was going to have to do something. That much at least was clear. She found him in the corridor outside Elid's rooms. Not by design, she had been walking the length of the castle for the first time since arriving, testing the ankle on level ground the way Elid had instructed, one careful circuit and then back. He was coming from the opposite direction, and they arrived at the same point in the corridor at the same moment, and there was nowhere useful for either of them to be, except where they were. "You're walking," he said. Elid's orders. She stopped. The ankle held. She said I could leave tomorrow. Something moved across his face, brief, controlled, gone before she could name it. "I know," he said. "She told me, so he knew." She had wondered this afternoon, sorting herbs and thinking in circles, whether Elid had told him the way she had told her, as a fact delivered without interpretation, leaving the recipient to determine what it meant. Apparently, yes. They stood in the corridor. The castle was quieter in the evening, the particular quality of a large building settling into itself, footsteps fewer and further between, the light from the wall sconces warm and low. It was, she thought, a very ordinary place to have a conversation that didn't feel ordinary. "I wanted to thank you," she said, properly, "before I go. You already thanked me. For the ride to Valdenmoor. Not for the rest of it." He looked at her steadily, said nothing. She had learned, over the past several days, that his silences were not absences. They were a form of attention, a way of staying present without filling the space unnecessarily. She had come to find it easier than she expected. "You didn't have to stay," she said. "You had things that needed your attention. You stayed anyway." She paused. "I'm aware of what that costs." "It was the right thing to do," he said. "Perhaps." She looked at him. "But you could have done the right thing and left after the first night. Most people would have." He had no answer for that. Or he had one and was not offering it, which with Cale she was learning amounted to different things. She thought about everything she had been constructing and deconstructing since the afternoon. The categories that hadn't held, the explanations that had been almost convincing, and then weren't. The image of a chair at an angle that would leave a mark on a person's neck, and a man who had apparently not considered this worth avoiding. She had planned to leave tomorrow. She had planned to thank him, briefly, and walk back through the forest on a healing ankle with a stick for the uneven parts of the path, and return to her life, which was a good life, small and purposeful, and entirely her own. She was still planning to leave tomorrow, but she thought about the sea, about the way he had said it, about the southern coast where the light lasted longer than you expected. "I don't want to leave," she said. The corridor was very quiet. Cale went still in the way of someone who has heard a thing and is deciding whether they heard it correctly. She watched him make that decision, watched him arrive at the far side of it, and stay there. "Then don't," he said. "It's not that simple." "I know. My mother can be provided for," he said. "If you'll allow it. A healer, supplies, whatever she needs. Not as charity." He said the last part with the precision of someone who had anticipated the objection and removed it in advance. As a practical arrangement. "You have knowledge of plants and medicines that would be useful here. Elid has mentioned it." She looked at him. "Elid mentioned it. This morning." She almost laughed. Elid, who said nothing unnecessarily, who delivered facts without interpretation and left recipients to determine meaning. Elida had been busy this morning. She filed this away as information about Elid that she would think about later. "That's a very practical argument," she said. "Yes, you could have led with it. You hadn't said you didn't want to leave yet." She looked at him for a long moment. He looked back with the particular steadiness she had come to associate with him. Not patience exactly, something more active than patience. The attention of someone who had decided something and was waiting to see if the world would catch up. She thought about calculations, about plans that didn't account for things, about the habit of carrying weight alone until the habit became invisible. "Kyle," she said. He was already looking at her. "If I stay." She said it carefully, the way she said things she meant to say only once. "It isn't because of the arrangement." Something shifted in his expression, something that had been very controlled for a very long time, releasing slightly at one point. Not a smile. Something quieter than a smile and more permanent. "I know," he said. The corridor was quiet around them. The sconces burned low. Outside, the night was doing what nights do, unhurried, indifferent to the small and significant things happening inside castle walls. For the first time since he had found her beneath the dusk fern tree, neither of them was waiting for her to leave. Spring came late to Valdenmoor that year. It arrived the way it always did in that part of the world, not in a single morning, but in increments. A degree of warmth added here, a week of rain replaced by something gentler, the tree line at the edge of the eastern wood going from gray to the particular pale green that meant the worst was over. Maeva noticed it first in the herbs. She always noticed things first. The ones she had planted along the southern wall of the castle had come through the winter better than she had allowed herself to hope. She had not told anyone how much she had hoped. That was still a habit she was working on, the one where she kept the size of what she wanted to herself, in case it didn't happen, in case the calculation failed again. It was getting easier, slowly. Her mother had come in the autumn. She had stayed 6 weeks, longer than planned, and when she left she had taken Maeva's hands at the road and held them for a moment without speaking. Her mother was not a woman who made productions of things either. It was, Maeva had sometimes thought, the quality she had inherited most completely, what her mother had seen in those 6 weeks, in the way a certain man moved through a room when Maeva was in it, in the way he listened when she spoke, in the way the castle had quietly rearranged itself around her presence, as though it had always been waiting for her to arrive. Her mother had kept to herself. She had simply held Maeva's hands on the road and smiled the way people smile when they have been worrying about someone for a very long time and have finally been given permission to stop. Maeva had thought about that smile all winter. On the morning she returned to the eastern wood for the first time, the light was pale gold and cool, the ground soft beneath her boots. She had identified 3 trees in the weeks before, all of them with dusk fern growing at heights she could reach without difficulty. None of them the old tree, none of them requiring the kind of calculation she had made in autumn and gotten wrong. She was still learning to let some things be easier than they needed to be. She heard the horse before she saw it. She finished the cluster she was cutting, wrapped it, placed it in the jar. Then she looked up. Kyle stopped at the edge of the clearing. He looked at her the way he always looked at her now, and she had stopped trying to find a practical category for it. He dismounted. "You didn't say you were coming out today," he said. "You didn't ask." He came to stand beside her. Close enough that she was aware of him. That was enough. That had always been enough with him. "Good growth," he said, looking up at the tree. "Better than I expected." He was quiet for a moment. Then, not looking at her, in the tone he used for things he had been thinking about for longer than he was going to admit. "There's a gathering in the south this summer, near the coast." A pause. "I thought you might want to come." She looked at him. He was still looking at the tree, offering it the way he offered most things, quietly, without pressure, as though the answer were entirely hers, and he had simply wanted her to have the option. She thought about a night she barely remembered, a room she had believed was private, 3 words spoken into the dark that she had never said to anyone. He had remembered, across months, across a winter, and he had remembered. "Yes," she said. Simply, the way she said things she meant completely. He looked at her then, and something in his face settled into a warmth he didn't try to hide anymore. They walked back toward the castle together, the horse following without being asked. the spring light coming through the canopy in long, unhurried lines. She thought about the coast, the warmer water, the light that lasted longer than you expected, and the man walking beside her, already making room for it. There would be time. Thank you so much for being here until the very end. If this story stayed with you, please share your thoughts in the comments. I truly love hearing from you. And if you want more stories, subscribe, be part of my library. A new story is always waiting. I'll see you in the next one.